Hiring is super challenging right now, right? I mean, we got people that just want large sums of money. It's hard to find good people. It's just really, really challenging right now. So, this is part 4 in our 5-part series of how to hire successfully and retain your people for the long term. Stay with me. Welcome to the Rapport Advantage Podcast. I am Alex Swire-Clark, human behavior expert, author, and award-winning speaker. Understand yourself and others to unlock your potential. Talking to you about how to use this emotional intelligence piece to hire more effectively in your organization. Again, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. We'd love to have you a part of the team. And again, feel free to like any and all videos here as we help to increase your emotional intelligence and make you a better person, both personally and professionally, when it comes to this whole communication thing that we talk about on the channel. So today, we're talking about part 4 of the hiring secrets to success. We've already mentioned parts 1, 2, and 3. I will put links below in the description for ways to get a hold of that information. Really, really great stuff there. So, how to hire effectively, part 4, asking the right questions. Asking the right questions. So, I'm going to share with you on my screen here a little thing that I like to call a DISC overview that'll take about 30 seconds from a percentages standpoint. If you haven't understood DISC before, or you've never been encountering that, there's all kind of great tools out there that talk about DISC and personality and temperament, things like Strengths Finders and Colby and Enneagram, and all those things are great. So feel free to look up those things, Culture Index, Predictive Index, all great tools. But we're going to talk about DISC today because it's super easy for me to teach it and relate to you in a quick video / podcast. So let me share my screen right quick. All righty. Share my screen. Okay, perfect. So what we have in front of us is our DISC model. So our Ds are outgoing and task-oriented, never met a challenge they couldn't face, love to be in charge, that kind of thing. Our Is are inspirational. So they are always enthusiastic, optimistic, love to be around people. S's are more reserved, but like to be around people. So they're more of a supportive kind of person, very fierce friends. And our C's, of course, are our analytical types, reserved and task-oriented. Think accountants, think scientists, those kind of folks who bring order to the chaos of the world. Now, I want to put this out there to you right quick in terms of the percentages of the general population so that you'll know what we're talking about when it comes to how many people you're reaching with a particular message when you're trying to hire these folks, because your interview questions need to match the personality style you're talking to, right? And if you've done your groundwork in those first 3 phases, you'll know who you're looking for. So Ds represent 10% of the population, just 10. So a lot of employers want these folks. They're goal-driven, all about execution, really want to deliver results, but unfortunately, they're just only 10% of the population, so there's just not that many out there. For your Is, that's 25 to 30% of the population. Your S's make up the largest group at 30 to 35% of the population. And then your C's are 20 to 25% of the population. Now, the key part of this slide is that your C's and S's, if you do the math, 25 plus 35, that's 60%. Your C's and S's, those reserve types, 60% of the population. 60% of the population is reserved. And therefore, the outgoing population is going to be about 40%. So assuming we're being industry agnostic here, not talking about just engineers or, just, professional meeting planners or whatever, just industry agnostic, is the majority of the world going to be more outgoing or reserved? Just looking at the math, 40 versus 60. It's reserved, right? So reserved, yes. So 60% reserved, 40% outgoing, again, for you podcast folks out there listening to us today. So that means that 60% of the people on the planet don't want to be the first person to speak at a cocktail party. They don't like to talk about themselves very much. But what do most HR people lead with as a rapport building question? Maybe the first question in the interview. It's, tell me about yourself, right? Tell me about yourself. And that is an epic fail. It's just garbage. I mean, it's a bad idea, as my lady from the Golden Girls is saying right here. Tell me about yourself. That's going to work with maybe 40% of the population. So you're going to miss the boat when trying to build rapport in that first part of the interview with 60% of the population if you lead with, tell me about yourself. Because for high S or C, that's very icky. They don't want to toot their own horn and blow their trumpet about themselves. That's just not who they are. So we have to have some tools in place that allow us to ask appropriate questions. And if you go back to our job benchmarking talk that we mentioned about putting people in the role and creating a job benchmarking back in in part 2, we talked about hiring insights. And I want to show you what my tool looks like. So this is my job benchmarking tool that I use. So we go through, we measure a candidate, and let's say that the ideal candidate for the role we're looking for is an SIC. Okay, so an SIC. All right, so as you can see on the graph here, we've got everything is just slightly above average, and then our D is down at 30. The rest of our numbers are 59, 65, and 57. So someone who's close to the middle, and someone who's going to be pretty emotionally intelligent and fairly flexible, depending on the situation in terms of how they behave. So what does that do for us? Well, number one, it allows us to verify, do these words that are on page 2 of my report match what I'm looking for? So those words are kind, optimistic, orderly, correct, enthusiastic, soft-hearted, cooperative, predictable. Do those things match up with what I'm looking for in that job? So yes, 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 yes. Okay, yes, boom. Okay, so now we've validated what we've done as a team to get that benchmark in place. All right. So once we've got that, then we go to page 3. And what's on page 3? The candidate's strengths. Right. So for this SIC, their strengths are that they're supportive and interactive, and they're also perceptive towards others. So when I look into that a little bit deeper, it says supportive and interactive. The candidate is relationship-oriented and nurturing. The candidate tends to be concerned about how others feel and the reasons for their feelings. Okay. Candidate, you usually express ideas with a mindset of suggesting and or encouraging. So if I'm focused on having someone who's relationship-oriented and nurturing, then one of my interview questions I can have is, tell me about a time when you've displayed a high degree of nurturing in a previous role. Right? Because I want someone who's nurturing. I've gone through the job benchmark. This tells me what I need to have, and I need someone who's nurturing that role. So ask them that question. Give an example of where you've displayed a high degree of nurturing in a previous role. Now, that is a meaty, to the point question, which is going to be great. Now, that might not be the one that we lead with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a description in the link I'm going to put a link in the description below for how you can get our white paper for our 4 best rapport building questions for each personality style. Okay, 4 best rapport building questions for each personality style. So you can use that to build rapport in the first part of the interview, and then start getting to the meaty questions, which are some of these. And so the second part says perceptive towards others. Candidate has an ability to sense what people are feeling and understand their mindset. The candidate desires to be sensitive and appropriate when dealing with others. The candidate enjoys providing a fun, team-oriented environment where people get along without conflict. So a question that could be related to this is, give me a time in a previous role where you have provided a way for people to have fun and you've removed conflict from a situation. Either of those will be fine. Provided a fun environment or reduced conflict from a situation that was going on. So again, if we're talking about someone who needs to be able to snuff out conflict quickly, that's a question we need to ask, right? So the job benchmark lays into, the types of things we're looking for from a behavior standpoint, and then boom, we've got those questions right there. Then we go to our next page, and our next page has our main motivations, their values of team member, their keys to motivation. So we can ask them questions like, it says in terms of keys to motivation, a leader who sets a good example, complete, clear direction for projects to be completed. So we can ask them a question about, have you ever worked for a boss who just didn't have a good direction or, kind of led the team in a specific way? And ask those kind of questions so they can reveal to you, yes, that motivation is, or yes, that, or no, that motivation is not important to me. And then we've got how they act best under pressure. So we can do some role-playing things, right? So it says that under pressure, they're accepting, they're compassionate, considerate, likable, cooperative, and modest. And we can put that to the test in a role-playing situation where you might be a little more assertive or direct in your conversation and see how they respond. And then how others perceive them under pressure. We can ask some questions to that. So this builds your interview question profile in addition to the rapport building questions. And now you've got a good solid 45 minutes to an hour and a half of questions that are really going to hit home to what the job benchmark says, right? And we can ask about skills, but again, I'd rather put people in the role, part 3, before they get the role to test those skills. This talks about temperament and how they're going to respond. Are they going to be a good fit for your culture, et cetera, right? And of course, the job matching benefits for what we're doing are numerous, but when we're putting them in a role and we're doing the job benchmark and then we're asking interview questions, we're going to get higher performance because we're matching them to their role, and people are going to love what they do. And there's going to be increased retention because, again, we're matching them to a role. They're going to get energy from that role, and they're going to love what they do. So they're going to stay, and they're going to have greater employee satisfaction because, again, they love what they do. We've matched them to the proper role. We just haven't said, oh, they're fun. That was a great interview. Let's put them over here. Well, that's great. You may or may not be right, but you haven't used any objective data to help substantiate why that is that you're putting them in that role, right? Does that make sense? So higher performance, increased retention, and greater employee satisfaction. That's what we're all looking for. I mean, in any situation like that. So in terms of your interview questions, use a job matching tool that's going to help you kind of construct those questions, and each different role should have its own set of questions. Now, maybe you're asking the same opening question or two to every person that you hire, but the more specific that you can be in terms of hitting their personality style from the rapport building phase in that first 10 to 15 minutes of the interview, to then asking questions that are directly related to that role that come from, times in their past experiences where they can show you where they've displayed a high degree of integrity, or they've taken initiative, or whatever those things that you value as a company are going to matter. That's not even talking about core values, which you should have already addressed, way back when in the first step of that interview process. So all these things mesh together until we have a super solid process, right? So we've covered all of our bases, core values. So we make sure we have that long-term culture match. We talk about the job description and the job matching, getting them in the right role, creating that role, and making sure we're hiring to that role. And then we're putting people in the role before they actually get it, making sure they can do what their resume says they can do. And then we actually get to the interview questions themselves. We're customizing these to the candidate that we're searching for, so that we can know if those things are going to apply, and not just asking just general ordinary questions. Again, in the description, I'll put a link to the 4 best questions for each personality style in that rapport building phase, so you can have those as you need them. So again, subscribe to the channel. Love to have you on board and support us. We appreciate that. Like any and all videos that you've got here. And coming up next will be part 5, how all of this comes together and what we need to do to finish this off. Thanks so much for being with me today. Take care.